All right. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm going to call the meeting to order. My name is Marla Billinghurst. With me this afternoon are Ms. Gisela Rempel and Mr. Richard Whitbread. Sorry, I forgot. I would like to begin by acknowledging that we are in Treaty 1 territory on the traditional homeland of the Métis Nation. Sorry. As I said, my name is Marla Billinghurst. With me today are Gisela Rempel and Mr. Richard Whitbread. Ms. Belen Rojo is the recording secretary, and the assessor today is Mr. Stephen Lobenstein. As directed by Manitoba Health, we're requesting people avoid close contact within 2 meters with anyone showing symptoms of respiratory illness, such as coughing or sneezing. If you are experiencing flu-like symptoms, we are requesting that you excuse yourself from the room. We will be hearing applications for revision of the assessment roll in accordance with the Municipal Assessment Act. The matters for which revision is requested have been described in each application, and we will limit discussion to those matters. The statements that are made at this hearing are sworn testimony, and anyone speaking to the matters must be sworn in. Be advised that comparisons of assessments of properties are not considered evidence of market value by the Board of Revision. The Board of Revision is appointed annually by Council and is independent of it and the City Administration. It makes its decisions on the basis of the evidence provided at this hearing and issues a written order that will be mailed to all parties as soon as possible. Please note that the Board's decision with respect to an application may be appealed to the Manitoba Municipal Board if the matter pertains to assessed value or classification, or to the Court of Queen's Bench if the matter pertains to the application of exemptions from taxation. Should you wish to appeal, information on how to do so will be included with the Board's order. With respect to the hearing process, I will confirm the matters to be addressed with each applicant following the swearing in. We will then have the assessor's testimony, followed by questions that the applicant may have, and then the applicant's testimony followed by questions. Each side will have an opportunity to summarize if they wish. Once all the evidence about an application has been brought forward, the applicant may leave. The process will repeat for each item on the docket today, and the session will close after all the applications have been heard, and the Board will deliberate in private and make its decisions. You will receive the order by registered mail as soon as possible. As information, all public hearings are live streamed, recorded, and will be part of the public record. And I'll remind everyone that use of cell phones is not permitted except by approval of the chair. Please silence them, return them off. Thank you. The first matter we will be hearing today is 730 Nairn Avenue. Ms. Rojo, could you please swear everybody in?
State your full name. Stephen Lobenstein. And you affirm the evidence you present is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you. Please state your full name.
I'm going to assume you're talking to me.
Yes.
Bradford Scott Workstrom.
And you affirm the evidence you're about to present is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Lobenstein, please proceed when you're ready.
Okay, the first item is 730 Nairn Avenue. The business assessment ID is 23368, and the total annual rental value is $64,920. Just to expedite this a bit, Brad, are you confirming this one?
We're seeking a confirmation. I don't have client instruction to do otherwise, so yeah, please do so.
Okay.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Just making a note of that. Perfect. Thank you very much. The next matter is 344 Oak Point Highway.
Okay, 344 Oak Point Highway. The business assessment ID is 23743, and the total annual rental value is $156,720. Total area is 16,156 square feet, and the overall ARV per square foot is $9.70. So we're applying a model rate or a base rent of $7.25 to the full area. We're also applying full heat, electricity, water, and air conditioning for occupancy costs to get our total annual rental value of $156,720. So if you just turn to page 2 and 3, you can get a look at the building. This is a tire distributor, Dunray Tire Ltd. So they're basically a vehicle service garage. You can see an aerial picture on page 4 as well. And on page 5, there is a map of where it's located on Oak Point Highway. So that being said, to find our base ARV, we're going to look at rent comparables per square foot, that is. So we're looking, the first set of rent comparables we have are basically warehouse properties. They're on Keewatin. 2 of them are on Keewatin, Inkster, Eagle, Hutchings, and Brookside Boulevard. So they're all in fairly close location to the subject property. The lease terms are fairly new. They range from 2015 to 2017, and the lease terms range from 2 years to 11 years. The reported areas are fairly similar to the subject property at ranging between 13,880 square feet up to, 12,884 square feet up to 20,500 square feet. And the reported rents fall within the range of our model rent. So they range from $5.22 all the way up to $6 or $8.90 a square foot. So if you flip to page 2, you'll see the rent comparables for vehicle service garages also in Winnipeg. So these vehicle service garages are on McPhillips, Pembina, Oak Point Highway, Skirfield, King Edward, and Main Street. So they're a little further out than the other ones, aside from the Oak Point Highway one and the King Edward one, which are fairly close. Actually, even McPhillips is fairly close to the subject property. And again, they range in areas from 7,935 square feet all the way up to 24,255 square feet. And the reported rents range from $8.15 a square foot up to $22.05 a square foot. So for the warehouse comparables, they range in years, basically a year built. So they a 380 Keewatin was built in 1975. 370 Keewatin was built in 1998. 59 Eagle was built in 1974. 167 Hutchings was built in 1974. And the Brookside Boulevard was built in 2 stages, 1969 and 1974. As for the vehicle service garages, the McPhillips one was built in 2012. The Pembina one was built in 1976. Oak Point Highway was built in 1981. Skirfield was built in 1988. And King Edward was built in 1977. And the Main Street one was built in 2010. This is important because the subject property was built in 4 different stages. It was built between 1964 and 1990 we have here. So we feel that with our rent comparables for both industrial warehouse properties and also vehicle service garages, that they support the base rent of $7.25 a square foot, and it should be. Sorry, my mistake. We feel that the total annual rental value of $156,720 should be confirmed. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Borgstrom, do you have any questions?
Excuse me, I do have a few. I first want to start with the city's calculation of the air-conditioned area. This is a vehicle service-related premise, correct?
Correct.
And in your experience, it would be almost unheard of for the service bays to be air-conditioned, right?
I don't know if it's unheard of, but I would say
let's say exceedingly rare.
Sure.
Have you, and the city has applied air conditioning occupancy costs to the entire premise area, right?
We haven't applied full occupancy costs to the entire.
Okay. And you haven't inspected the property, right?
I have not, no.
No, fair enough. And so if we take a look at your overhead shot on page 4, you'll see there's a sort of an L-shaped section towards the bottom of the structure, right?
That would be the office section.
Yeah, and you see there on top, that would looks like an HVAC unit, right?
That's correct, yeah.
And if we look at the balance of the building, there is no HVAC unit rooftop, is there?
Not on the rooftop. Nope, not that I can see.
And so perhaps the air conditioning area should be adjusted?
You could be correct on that, Brad. It would require inspection, and maybe we should go and take a look at that to confirm everything.
Or a verification from the occupant. Were you aware that this property was previously leased?
I don't have that in my records here. Does it look like?
Okay. So in any event, you're certainly using leases dating back to 2011, 2009, 2008, right?
Yeah,
If we look at your page 2.
Some of the vehicle service garages, yeah, they're dating back.
Okay. And so if this subject property had a lease in 2013, is that something that you would consider?
It would probably be somewhat evidence, absolutely.
Okay.
But I feel the supportive evidence that I've already shown, types of rent,
Bless you.
Thank you.
the two different types of rent comparables is supportive of our rate.
Okay. And you've attached, sorry, this is a little bit sideways here. Bear with me. You've attached the Board of Revision order from the 2020 Realty Appeal, and I presume that's in support of your position that the premise base rent is fair?
Well, they did. They said they just changed the cap rate, so it doesn't look like they changed anything with the net operation.
Okay. Do you know if there was a further appeal to the municipal board on this particular property?
There's a further appeal to the municipal board on this one.
There was. Okay. Those are my questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Rampel, any questions?
I'm just wondering, I see that it indicates there's 16,156 square feet, but in the applicant's brief, and maybe I should ask the question then, it says 16,000. I'm wondering if that's got something to do with the office area, or do we know how large the office area is?
Well, I do know, and what I would like to do is just take the opportunity to go through our evidence. I will actually show within our evidence that the city's own records show the gross floor area as 16,000 square feet. So obviously the premise area cannot be larger than the gross floor area of the building on the site. I'll show you that from an excerpt of the Board of Revision brief from the city.
Thank you. That's all my questions.
Thank you, Mr. Whitbread.
I have none. Thank you.
And I have none. So, Mr. Borgstrom, please proceed with your presentation.
So let's start with that question. So if we turn to, all of our pages are numbered in the bottom right-hand corner in fairly bold font. This would be page 28. And you'll see there that this is an excerpt, and in fact, the first page of, and it looks like I put the wrong one in here, but it's the 2018 appeal brief. There is a plan and gross floor area of 16,000 square feet. There is no mezzanine space in here. If we take a look at page 27, that's the page immediately preceding, you will see there the various components and the years that they were built. And you'll see there that if you add them all up, it adds up to 16,000 square feet, which is the area that we're using. And while we're at the rear of the brief, I want to turn you to page 29. When I look at a property such as this,
Sorry, what page did you say you cut out?
29,
Oh, 29,
very last page. Yeah, so I made inquiry with our client for this property, and they, regarding the air-conditioned area, and they have responded, in fact, that it is, in fact, only the office area that's air-conditioned, and they total it up to be about 2,400 square feet. That's the figure that we've applied for air conditioning. The other thing I want to point out, and I should have asked the assessor this question, but on his page 2, His rental comparable at 1284 Main Street is actually an MPI service center. And we did that property for the 2020 realty appeal. The reported area is actually incorrect, and I'm just going to share this screen real quick with you here. And what you're going to see here is the 2020 city brief, and you'll see there that Ms. Scheibel represented the city, and you'll see here that this particular building, that's the plan area, but the city actually used a gross leasable area of 44,000 square feet. So the calculated rate used by Mr. Laubenstein in his brief is incorrect, even in accordance with the city's own records. So the rental rate per square foot is considerably less than he's showing in his brief. I don't know why the records are different, but it is noteworthy. So we don't have any more questions about that. I'll stop sharing it. That is and you'll see they're built in 2010. That was again, the MPI service center. So 2,400 square feet is the air-conditioned area. We know that the gross floor area is 16,000 square feet, and the leasable area ought not exceed the gross floor area. So I can tell you that we previously inspected this property, and if my record, if I recall correctly, yes. And so I'm going to take you to page 19. This is an inspection that was done in 2012. This premise used to actually be rented to Denray Tire. It was actually owned by Paul's Hauling, and they sold it off to Denray Tire, but there was an arm's length lease previously on this property, and I will take you through that in a moment. But arising from previous appeals, we did the property inspection, and you can see as you go through it, very basic on the exterior on page 19 and 20, more resembles a converted warehouse. In any event, it's a vehicle service related use now. Page 21, more exterior shots, and you can see there the pictures were taken wintertime in December of 2012. Page 22, you'll see the interior. That's the reception area and showroom. And you can see the overhead HVAC vents. You don't see those in the work or in the service bays, and I'll go through that in a moment. But certainly in the office area and showroom, there is air conditioning. And on page 10, if I might just take you back there, well, we'll take you back there in a moment. It shows the HVAC unit rooftop. So more pictures on page 23, interior. 24, we start to get into the service bays, and you'll see there are no vents for any air conditioning or HVAC systems. You'll see there on page 25 at the top and on the bottom, overhead gas-fired units. So it certainly has heat, does not have air conditioning. So I'll let you go through the balance of the pictures for the 2012. We also inspected it in October of 2017. These were done by associates within my office. On page 10, you'll see there the rooftop HVAC unit on the office. That's the one I referred to in the assessor's overhead shot. So there's no debate that the office is air conditioned. We do have a disagreement about the service bays. And as you can see, and we'll just flip to the interior shots, you'll see on pages 14 and continuing, the exterior hasn't changed. The interior remains very much as it was. And page 15, again, you'll see the interior shots. Page 16, you'll see the interior showroom very much as it was during our previous inspection. So having said that, we took a look, as I said, at a number of rental comparables, and I referenced a previous lease of this property, and we show that on page 6, the details of it. There was a renewal of the lease in 2013. Denray has occupied this property for a number of years. Now, this was an arm's length lease as between Denray and Paul's Hauling. The specified rate was $5.78 per square foot on a net basis. The $5.78 per square foot represents the prescribed stepped up rent in 2017. I can tell you that the lease was set to end March 31st of 2018, but Denray actually purchased it, I believe it was January of 2018 from Pulse Hauling. So there was an arm's length lease in place. Almost 5 years later, they actually bought the property themselves. But that certainly is an indication of what the property would rent for. Certainly when we're looking at the dates on the assessor's comparables, this is within the date range that he has used in his submissions. And again, our rate is a stepped up rent as of 2017. So we show a number of rental comparables on page 6. I can tell you that number 1 at 140 Warman, that's a Fountain Tire. I can tell you that that was a rent disclosed by the city in a previous appeal hearing, and the balance of the leases come from our records. Some of them are standalone service garages. Some of them are body shops. And 1870 King Edward is certainly it's a trailer repair facility. 84 Skirfield, that's one of the ones that the assessor used. Their records are accurate. It is $9.55 per square foot. I've been to that premise. It is certainly superior in terms of condition as compared with the subject property. I can tell you that my view of this particular premise is that the actual lease in place is the strongest indicator of a market rent. Market rent being defined as willing landlord, willing tenant, each acting in their own best interest, each acting independently, it being an arm's length. So this meets all of the definitions of a market rent, the actual lease in place. And so we've concluded that that's the rent that should be applied here. In terms of this premise, we go through the calculations on page 7 based on 16,000 square feet. And again, we've adjusted the air conditioning area down to 2,400 square feet. So we are seeking a reduction based on all of that to $127,080. And I am open for questions.
Thank you very much. Mr. Lobenstein, any questions?
Yep. So on your page 6, you supplied 9 lease comparable that are obviously different from the subject property, because the subject property, you would agree, is now owner occupied?
Well, it currently is. There certainly was an arm's length open market lease within the property previously.
So between your 9 comparables and the comparables I have, those are over 20 market comparables that suggest that rents for this type of property in this area are actually much higher than the contract rent that you're showing.
Well, not for this area. I would actually suggest that the one at 329 Oak Point is in very close proximity. On our page 6, that is, I've personally inspected that property. That is a standalone vehicle service garage rented on an arm's length basis to an arm's length tenant.
Sure.
And I just want to finish one more point really quickly. Your lease rent for 1284 Main needs to be adjusted to reflect 44,000 square feet of leasable area, as Altus used in the Board of Revision hearing for the realty, as did the city. So that rental rate needs to be adjusted.
And that's fine. But nonetheless, even if it gets adjusted, the averages would be far higher than the $5.78 per square foot.
But I never look at, I show them for reference. I never rely in particular on an average or a median. In this case, we've got something of an older property. In terms of location, the strongest indicator would be 329 Oak Point. But I look at the market. What does the market tell me? There's a range. But we also have an arm's length lease within the subject premise that stepped up in 2017. So
on mine, 440 Oak Point, which is $12.13, which is a truck repair center, so somewhat similar to the subject property. I guess my point I'm trying to make.
Well, and I was just looking that up, so just bear with me for a moment. I think I've worked on that appeal, and my recollection is that is not an arm's length rent. So I just want to take a quick peek at it. I didn't get to it in questions because I couldn't open it up fast enough. But Yeah, okay. So this is the owner of 440. It's a hold co, lease co setup. Gilles Bouchard Investments is, and I'll screen share this with you in a moment, is the owner of the real estate. The occupant of the property, the ownership of the subject property is 1/3 owner of the occupant. Let me just screen share this with you. This is our evidence from the Board of Revision hearing on this. And I know it's been into the board previously and exactly the same information was submitted. So you'll see at the top there, this is for 440 Oak Point. And we very clearly show that we don't consider to be arm's length. I'm not sure why after these hearings, assessors don't go back and correct their records, but certainly that was the evidence put forward at the Board of Revision hearing, not just in this for 440 Oak Point for 2020, but also in previous years as well. So we don't view that as an arm's length lease. So if you don't have any questions, I'll stop screen sharing again.
I appreciate you showing that, but that's typed in your own brief. There's no information showing otherwise.
Well, it's not just this year, it's in previous years, and notwithstanding that, there's never been an inquiry from the city that I'm aware of, nor has any change been made to the record.
Mr. Borgstrom?
Yes, ma'am?
Mr. Borg. Okay. Major point. Let's move on. Mr. Lobenstein, do you have any further questions?
No, those are all my questions.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Rempel?
No, I have no questions, thank you.
Mr. Whitbread?
Just one point of clarification. Would you consider this an arm's length transaction or not?
The lease that I'm showing?
Yes.
For the subject property, at the time of the lease, it was in fact fully arm's length. Paul's Hauling owned the property. Denray Tire occupied the property there too. They are not related in any way. Denray continues to occupy the property as it is. And so at the time that this lease was in place, including the step in 2017, it was fully arm's length.
Okay, that's what I misunderstood.
Yeah.
I thought Paul's Hauling also owned the business, but
not to my knowledge. I believe our contact information remains the same.
Yep.
And I didn't look, but I don't believe we've previously done a business assessment appeal on it, other than perhaps 2018 after they took possession. So,
okay, thank you. No further questions.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, the next matter we have on the docket is 400 Keewatin Street.
400 Keewatin Street. The business assessment ID is 4224. The total annual rental value is 154,800 square feet for a total area of all premises for 17,475 square feet. And the overall ARV per square foot is $8.86. We have a model rate or base rate of $6.73 per square foot we're applying. We are applying occupancy costs of full heat, electricity, and water, but only 900 square feet of air conditioning to reach our annual rental value. Just flip to page 2. You can see where it's located. You can see pictures of an overhead view and a side view of the property on Keewatin Street. That being said, for this property, we have 4 different rent comparables. It's at 380 Keewatin, 372 Mountain, 277 Hutchings, 959 Keewatin, and 167 Hutchings Street. These are all in very close proximity to the subject property. The lease starts, again, are fairly recent, ranging from 2012 to 2015, and the leases range from 5 years to 11 years. And the reported areas range from 13,513 square feet all the way up to 21,854 square feet, which are very similar to the subject property. The reported rents range from $6.50 a square foot up to $8.90 a square foot, again, which are very similar or which fall within the range of our model rent. So that being said, the The subject property was built in 2 stages. I have a 1947, I believe, at 14 feet and 2,000. Or sorry, 67 at 2,000 square feet, and my mistake here. In 1967 at 14 feet wall height and 2,021 foot wall height. Sorry, again, my printing's terrible. It's in 1997 at 14 foot and 2,021 feet.
Okay, wait, sorry, just to clarify.
So the first building is at 1997 and it's 14 feet. And the second building we have at 2,000 and it's 21 feet. Got to write a little clearer.
Nothing was built at 6. Okay.
Yeah. And just for our ranking rules, so for 380 Kuwaitan, we have a 1975 build and 12-foot wall height. For 1372 Mountain, we have a 1988 build and it's 20 feet. For 277 Hutchings, it's 1970 and it's got 20-foot wall height. For 959 Kuwaitan, it's 1981 and it's got 26-foot wall height. And 167 Hutchings is 1974 and 20-foot wall height. So the subject properties are similar age. They're actually quite a bit older than the actual subject property, but they have similar wall height nonetheless. So we feel that the total annual rental value of $154,800 is fair and equitable and should be confirmed. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Borgstrom, any questions?
I do have a few. Excuse me. So, do you know if the subject property has mezzanine space within it?
That I don't have with me.
Okay. But would you, when you have mezzanine space, you actually, where there is mezzanine space present, would you agree that you have less usable height because it's essentially splitting the difference between the clear ceiling and the floor?
It completely depends on the mezzanine space.
Okay. Similarly, the land to building ratio is something that might affect the rental rate, correct?
Land to building ratio could have an effect on rental rate.
Okay. Do you know what it is for the subject property?
I did not calculate that number.
Do you know what it is for any of your rental comparables?
I don't know. No, I do not.
Okay. Now,
this property seems to have fairly decent, just looking at the picture, it seems to have fairly decent land to building ratio. In the sense that it would be easy to get materials in and out with trucks. It's got good frontage on Keewatin, and you can also even use Hecla Avenue too to come in and out of. So, yeah.
Right. So, do you know what the size of the site is?
No, I don't have that information.
Okay. Now, similarly, do you know what the land areas or the land building ratios are in your comparables?
No, I didn't calculate those.
Okay. Do you know if any of the rental comparables have mezzanine space within them?
Nope.
Okay. Now, 380 Keewatin, that's Westcon, correct? As a tenant?
Yeah, that would be for the tenant. I'm not sure the tenant is, but that would be next door to the subject property.
Right. And there's 2 buildings on the site, right?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Now, Westcon, I can tell you as a client, and they occupy the entire site, both buildings. Do you know if your calculations of the rental rate are for both buildings or just one?
I believe that's just for one of the buildings.
So, but the lease is for both buildings, right?
That I don't know. I just know
Okay.
the rate that we have for one of the buildings.
Okay. So if we look at your page 2, that's a sort of an oblique shot, the bottom picture. It looks to me, in looking at that, so what would be the typical land building ratio that would be expected for an industrial property?
See, that's an interesting question because land to building ratio is something that completely ranges throughout different industrial properties, including the zoning. So when you're looking at your M3 zoning, you're going to look at a fairly high land to building ratio because they're going to use that land to store the materials, their products, maybe even manufacture their goods. when you're looking at your more general M2, a lot of times the production is or the manufacturing is going to be happening inside the building itself. So they want to use the whole site pretty much to do their manufacturing. So land to building ratio can vary. As we know, we've talked about before, it's important to be able to get trucks in and out for materials, so they have to have enough room to turn around, which I feel this property definitely does.
On the same vein, though, loading doors would be another important feature, correct?
Yeah, loading doors are a feature that industrial properties do have, yes.
Do you know how many the subject property has?
I have not counted them, though.
Okay. Those are my questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Rumpel.
No questions, thank you.
Mr. Whitbread.
Nothing, thanks.
Nor do I. Mr. Borgstrom, please proceed.
Thank you. So I can tell you that I have personally previously inspected this property. I'm going to take you through the pictures I took during that inspection, starting at page 8. These are exterior photographs taken. The top picture on page 8, as well as the bottom picture, are taken from Hecla Avenue, and you can see there at the bottom on the left-hand side of the photo, that's the lower wall height building that we're talking about at the rear. The front building is of a newer vintage because it actually had a fire, so they had to rebuild it, and this is what they've replaced. And you'll see there at the top of page 8 a window, or at the top and the bottom both. That's the mezzanine space within this building. So where you have an industrial use and you have upper office area as this is, your clear ceiling height underneath for industrial purposes is much lower. It has a lower desirability and would, in my mind, attract a lower rate, certainly attributable. So when you're counting both spaces at a uniform rate, it's almost like double counting. So you need to make some kind of adjustment. Page 9, these are the 2 grade level loading doors in the facility. Those are adjacent to the parking lot on the north side of the property. And you'll see there a forklift in the foreground. You'll see some ventilation there. Page 10, that's the office area on the top. But if you continue on out of the office area on the bottom of page 10, that's also some of the mezzanine space. And you can see, or maybe you can't make it out clearly, the clear ceiling height in that location is quite limited. So in terms of industrial use, limited, it's not load bearing, and you can see there it's basically tables with plastic for their design templates, etc. We show some overheads or from that mezzanine space at the interior that I just showed you on page 11. Looking down, and you'll see there at the rear on at the bottom of page 11, at the rear, you'll see one of the grade level loading docks that I referred to, and you'll see there the use. They don't make use of the entire clear ceiling height, but it's there, which is not a bad thing. Page 12, you can see some of their operation on the top, and they make signage, etc. there, plasticized. Bottom of page 12, you can see there a picture of some of the mezzanine areas that I'm talking about. And you can see, so if you have, I think it was 21-foot wall height, you have essentially half of that on each level for the, like half for the mezzanine, and at the half below is very restricted, and I'll show you that in a moment. On page 13 at the bottom, you'll see some of the loading facilities there. At the top, you will see it's almost like a shipping area there. Page 14, you'll see a little bit of a lunchroom on the bottom. That's in the mezzanine. Page 15, a locker room. And then the lower level with their processing equipment. The reception area on 16. And I wanted to show you the underneath part. My apologies. And so on page 12, I'm just coming back to that. On the top picture, you'll see there the low ceiling height fluorescent lighting. That's what I was talking about when for industrial purposes, now you've got very limited space. That, in my mind, requires an adjustment downward from the overall rental rate. So we took a look at some rental comparables. We show those on page 5. They're all relatively newer buildings. They're out in that sort of general northwest quadrant, and they average 629. They have a median of 620. From the subject property itself, I've actually concluded that 650 a square foot is the right rate. That includes an overall rate, or that is an overall rate that includes the mezzanine space. So that's the rate that we would apply or are applying in our analysis. And we show the calculations on page 6. We're looking for a reduction based on that 650 a square foot. No disagreement with respect to the occupancy costs. So we're looking for a reduction to $150,780. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Lobenstein, any questions?
Just a few. When looking for market comparables, do you feel that there should be a difference between multi-tenant and single-tenanted buildings?
It depends. In this particular case, you've got a low land building ratio, right? It's 2.7 to 1. In multiple tenant situations, they have shared use of, generally speaking, of common areas. Single tenant properties, the market may or may not show a difference, and I don't know whether that's higher or lower, one as compared with the other. I haven't seen any conclusive trend one way or the other.
So would it not be, for industrial type properties, a single tenanted building would probably be, a better option for manufacturing, storage, getting trucks in and out, because like you said, in the multi-tenanted buildings, there's common area they have to share. It's much tighter, it's much more difficult.
And see, I don't necessarily view it as that. It much depends on each individual circumstance, but it is not at all unusual to see manufacturing facilities located within a multiple tenant property.
So of your 15 comparables, only 3 of them are single tenancies. The rest are what's O stand for?
That's actually a 0. It's a field that wasn't complete. I believe that was a city comparable. We couldn't determine whether it was single or multiple tenant in our review of it. But of that, I would agree that of the list, 3 are definitely single. All but 1 remaining would be multiple, and then 1 is unknown.
Okay, those are all my questions.
Thank you very much. Ms. Rumpel?
No, I have no questions. Thank you.
Mr. Whitbread?
I have none, thank you.
Nor do I. So we can move on to the next matter, which is 635 McPhillips Street. Mr. Lobenstein, whenever you are ready.
Okay. 635 McPhillips. We have a business assessment ID of 23263. The total annual rental value is $158,760. The total area is 20,120 square feet, and our overall ARV per square foot is $7.89. We're applying a model rate or a base rate of $5.73 per square foot. For occupancy costs, we're applying full heat, full electricity, full water, but only 3,045 square feet for air conditioning to reach our total annual rental value. To come to our model rent, we want to look at rent comparables. So we're looking at rent comparables on Bentall, Notre Dame, Church, Oak Point, and Alexander Avenue. They're all in fairly close proximity to the property. Some of them are a little further out, but they are fairly close. We'll quickly just look at page 2. You can get an aerial view of the subject property. The subject property was constructed in 5 stages. The first stage was in 1951 and accounts for over 16,000 square feet of area, and it's got 20-foot wall height. The next one was in 1966. It has 400 square feet and 12-foot Then they have a 1979 at 800 square feet and 12 feet. And they have a 1991 build at just over 1,800 square feet with 20 feet, and a 2005 build with 900 square feet and 13-foot wall height. So going back to the rent comparables, they are similar in the subject property in that they were built in 1964 all the way up to 1988 and range in wall height from 17 feet to 26 feet for the Alexander location. So that being said, with reported areas for the rent comparables ranging from 16,156 square feet all the way up to 27,200 square feet, they do fit within the area for the subject property. Same with the rents. These rents range from $5.50 a square foot up to $6.35 per square foot. So they do support our base rent at $5.73 a square foot. So we feel that the total annual rental value of $158,160 is fair and equitable. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Borgstrom, any questions?
I do have a couple of questions. And so just listening very quickly to your calculations, it sounds like 80% of this premise area was constructed in 1951?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, and there would have been some improvements and renos over the years, but certainly it's not a new property, correct?
No, you're right. You can see by some of the renovations in 2005, 1991, 1979, they've obviously, increased the square footage.
Mm-hmm.
You would assume that they would increase they would continue to maintain the property if they're putting money into it.
Right. Do you know what the wall heights are here?
Yeah, I have. Did I not mention them? Sorry.
Or perhaps
For the 1951, I have 20 feet.
Right.
For 1979, I have 12 feet. For the 1991, I have 20 feet. For 2005, I have 13 feet, and then 1966, I have 12 feet.
Okay. So fair to say then that your clear ceiling inside would be 18 inches to 2 feet less than that?
Less than the 20 feet?
Yes. You've got trusses, right?
It's possible. I haven't inspected the property. I haven't seen the inside of it, so I can't tell you.
If you don't have trusses, the roof falls down, right?
Yes.
So it's got trusses.
Okay.
And so that, in your view, is that wall height or is that clear ceiling height deficient in terms of industrial expectations?
Yeah, absolutely. In our market, we'll see a lot of buildings such as my comparables, the 17, 12, 22, and 22. Like, it's not common for buildings of this age, which would make a few of them, more than a few of them that have these wall heights.
So they're not numbered, and I just want to take a quick peek at your rental comparables. You're showing here 344 Oak Point Highway, and that's a property we've just dealt with, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you're reporting it there as an arm's length market rent comparable $573 a square foot.
Yeah.
Okay. Those are my questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Rampol?
I have no questions.
Mr. Whitbrad?
None, thank you.
Okay, nor do I. Mr. Borgstrom, please proceed with your present.
Okay, so the assessor has gone over the property. I will just have you, if you choose, look at page 3. We do show a breakdown of the different components, their plan and gross floor area. There is no mezzanine space within this property. With 20-foot wall height, it becomes difficult to actually have mezzanine space. So we don't disagree with the areas. It is on an oddly configured site. I can tell you that I did the 2020 realty assessment appeal on this property. And I'll turn to that in a moment. As an aside, the city has assigned an effective age overall to this property of 1956. So they've got some small additions in subsequent years. Hasn't changed the effective year bill a great deal. So it's mid-50s vintage, effective year bill. Assessor applied a base rent of $573 a square foot, and we see that from their evidence. I show here a number of rental comparables, also with comparatively lower wall height. I can tell you that these are exactly the same rental comparables I used in the hearing before the Board of Revision for the realty appeal. I also want to draw your attention to the pages 10 and 11, which are the board order for this property. And you'll see there on page 11, the board made its decision based on the evidence presented by the applicant. That was $475 a square foot in terms of a rental rate. Based on the same rental comparables, I draw the same conclusion. So we're also seeking a reduction in the premise base rent to $475 a square foot based on all of that, including the rental comparables. There's no disagreement with respect to occupancy costs, and so we're looking for a reduction to $139,080 based on all of that. So, thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Lobenstein, any questions?
Just similar vein as last time. Again, you're using many multi-tenanted buildings, not single-tenanted like the subject property. You yourself said it's difficult for multi-tenant buildings because they have common area. Would that not reduce their rent as compared to something like this property?
Not necessarily.
Okay, well, that's the only question I have for this property.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Rumpel.
No questions, thank you.
Mr. Whitbread.
I have none for the applicant, but may I redirect to the assessor?
Sure.
So I'm looking at this appeal, the realty appeal. Did you factor that into your thinking?
The decision? No, I did not, because there is a 2018 municipal board out on this property.
Sorry.
There's a 2018 municipal board out on this property, so we were not going to carry through the decision.
Okay. Thank you. No further.
Just to add on to that, there is no further appeal on this one for 2020.
And your evidence suggested 475 was the rate the board used in the appeal.
Well, I can tell you that the order says it was based on my evidence, and my evidence that I used was 475 a square foot.
Yeah, working backward, even if they didn't detail. Okay, I'm fine. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much.
Madam Chair, maybe we take a 5-minute break.
Absolutely. Okay. Belen, can you turn the cameras off, please? Or whatever you need. This meeting back to order. The next matter is 97 Plymouth Street.
1 second.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead. Okay, go ahead.
I'm calling this meeting back to order. The next matter on the docket is 97 Plymouth Street. Mr. Lobenstein, whenever you're ready.
97 Plymouth Street. The business assessment ID is 24262. The total annual rental value is $70,500, and the total area is 9,724 square feet. The overall ARV is $7.25 per square foot. So we're applying a model rent or a base rent of $5.14 per square foot. We're applying full heat, electricity, water, but no air conditioning to reach our total annual rental value. There is a lease in place that was signed in August of 2009 for $4.94 for the reported rent. So the comparables are on Eagle, Bentall, Plymouth, Church, and Bannister. And they are, the lease starts from 2011 to 2016. The lease terms are from 4 years to 10 years, and the reported areas are from 8,577 up to 15,810 square feet. So they're in a fairly close range to the actual premise. And the reported rents range from $5.22 a square foot up to $5.75 a square foot, where the model rent falls a little on the lower range of those comparables. Flipping over, you can see the property. It's kind of two properties that are on a narrow strip there. This would be the first of the properties, or the first of the buildings where the premise is located. Sorry, the year built that I have is 1973 with 16-foot wall height. So my comparables range from 1974 or 1969 to 1988, and their wall heights range from 14 feet to 17 feet. So we feel that the base rent of $5.14 is fair and equitable, and that the total annual rental value should be confirmed at $70,500. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Borgstrom, any questions?
I do have a couple of questions. And I know that it's been disclosed in more than one previous realty assessment appeal hearings. Were you aware that there is a holdco-leaseco relationship between this premise occupant and the real estate owner?
There's a relationship between the occupant and the owner. In what sense? Between
the premise occupant, Chicken Chef, and DFT Holdings, who holds title to the real estate?
I'm not aware of that.
Okay. So, just as a general question, does the department, after hearings, not go back to the department and make a note of these things that we keep telling them about?
We do have notes in our system. Whether or not a note like that made it into our system, I'm not aware.
Okay. And so there was a this building. So there's two buildings on the site, very skinny lot, and it's got a really low land building ratio, right?
Sorry, correct.
Okay. And as we look at your overhead on page 2, really the only, let me come at this another way. You certainly can't get a semi-trailer in there, right?
A semi-trailer would be very difficult.
Yeah, in fact, you'd have to be, in fact, you are limited to perhaps 3 and 5 ton trucks, right?
I mean, that's probably why this property was built that way.
Okay. And so there's 2 buildings on the property. The subject premise is the one closest to Plymouth Street, right?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. And you've not had an opportunity to inspect?
No, not this particular premise, but the quality vending I have inspected before next door, I believe. So.
Okay. And in fact, that's the arm's length lease on this property, right?
I believe so, yes.
Yeah, and so you haven't used that as one of your rental comparables?
Pardon me?
You have not used that as one of your rental comparables?
I have not used it.
It's on the same real property.
Yes, I understand.
Okay. Those are my questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Rumpel.
I have no questions at this time. Thank you.
Mr. Whitbread.
What is the business being operated in this building?
It's Chicken Chef Canada. So what they're actually doing there, I don't think they're making any food in there. I would assume it's probably storage for them.
Just storage.
That would be my guess. I don't know. I've not inspected it, but.
And would it be storage in relation to the retail outlets around Manitoba?
I can only assume.
You don't know that.
I'm not too sure.
Okay. Thank you. Now this lease expired, is it in 2018 it expired, maybe 2019? And you don't know if there's been a renewal of that lease. Your records don't indicate that. Okay. No further questions. Thanks.
Thank you very much. I have no questions. Mr. Borgstrom, please proceed.
Thank you. So as I kind of alluded to in my questioning of the assessor, the lease on the subject premise is not arm's length. DFT, there's a relationship between DFT Holdings and Chicken Chef. So I've included, starting on page 9, just a couple of pictures of the subject property, interior and exterior. And you can see there on the bottom of page 9, this is actually Chicken Chef corporate head office. So they have actually a small office area in here. And then on page 10, at the top, you can see some of the loading facilities there. You can see some of the structural issues with the concrete block, including repairs that have been done. And at the bottom of page 10, you can look, it's a look towards the rear of the site showing the other building quality vending on this site. So I can tell you that this property also was heard for the 2020 realty assessment. I can tell you that I did the appeal on that. And I can tell you that the Board of Revision reduced the assessment based on the net operating income that I presented. We show that on page 11 and 12. It's a 2020 order. We've also included a number of rental comparables on page 6. These are also, the odd thing about this one is that you've got a 16-foot wall height. So for industrial purposes, that's really, that's low, it's deficient. You got a low land building ratio, about 2.41 to 1. You've got very poor loading facilities, access, egress, for only small trucks. So we took a look at rental comparables. I can tell you that I used an overall rent of $475 blended for the rear building and the front building. The opinion I expressed at the Board of Revision was $5 a square foot for the front building and $4.50 a square foot for the rear building. The Board of Revision went with my net operating income. So I'm using for this hearing as well, $5 per square foot for the subject premise being the front of the site structure. So lower rent to the rear, $5 a square foot to the front. That's what we're applying. There's no disagreement with respect to the occupancy costs. So based on all of that, we are looking for a reduction to $69,120, and we show that on page 7 of our submission. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lobenstein. Any questions?
Hey, so just basically, you're asking for $5. The city's at $5.14 a square foot.
Yep.
So we're very, very close. As a matter of fact, we're closer than the gap in the rent comparables, which are at $5.
This isn't my client. The appeal was filed, and so we're here.
Okay, those are all my questions.
Ms. Rumpel.
No questions, thank you.
Mr. Whitbread.
Thank you.
Nor do I. Okay, thank you. Wait 1 minute. Okay, the next matter we have is 1615 Inkster Boulevard.
1615 Inkster Boulevard. The business assessment ID is 4685. The total annual rental value is $132,180. The total area is 16,000 square feet, and the overall ARV is $8.26 a square foot. We're applying a base ARV or a model rent of $5.81 per square foot. And we're applying full heat, electrical, water, and air conditioning to the subject property to get our annual rental value. There is a lease in place for this one. It is a gross lease that has been confirmed at $19.03 a square foot, so it's not a net lease. That being said, we'll just look at some pictures here on page 2. You can see a street view picture and an aerial view of the property. It's on Inkster Boulevard, which is displayed on the map below. So my rent comparables are in fairly close proximity to the subject property on Keewatin, Mountain, Hutchings, and Inkster. The lease starts range from 2015 to 2016, so they're fairly new. And the lease terms range from 2 years to 11 years. The reported areas are similar to the subject property in that they range from 12,884 square feet to 20,000 square feet. And again, the reported rates support the model rent of $5.81 because they range from $5.25 a square foot up to $8 a square foot. I will note that I actually have inspected this property quite a few years ago, so I am familiar with the building. There's quite a bit of office space in this building in the front of it, with lots of cubicles and such. There is, of course, a warehouse in the back of it. So we are, the property itself was built in 1973, and we have 15-foot wall height. So my comparables range from 1973 up to 1987, and they range from 16 feet I have 29 foot at the mountain location for the highest wall height. So we feel that the rent comparables support our model rent, and that the total annual rental value of $132,180 should be confirmed. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Borgstrom, any questions?
Thank you. I do have just a couple. This is occupied by Mickelson Coward, correct?
Correct.
Do you know who the owner of this building is?
I do not have that information with me.
Mickelson Coward?
They are the owner. Okay.
Yeah. So not an arm's length lease for your records. So when we take a look at the actual physical property itself, do we know what the reported wall height is?
I have 15 feet.
15 foot. So inside you're going to have something in the range of 13 foot clear ceiling?
Parts of it possibly, yeah.
And so that would be inadequate or deficient in terms of industrial expectations?
Not necessarily, no. I think as we've talked about before, when it comes to wall height for buildings this age, that's not unusual, and there's quite a few buildings this age in the city.
Okay, let's talk about the wall heights in your comparables. 380 Keewatin, do you know what that is?
Yeah, that's 19 foot.
19. Your 1330 Mountain?
24.
1450 Mountain?
29.
So in terms of expectations, 15 foot would seem to be a little on the skinny side, wouldn't it?
Oh, I also have Hutchings at 20 and Brookside's at 16 and Inkster's at 22. So I'm not saying it's the highest, but it's not unusual to see that.
Brookside is actually a trucking warehouse truck cross-dock, right? And so that is a very different kind of property than the subject. That would be a trucking related facility.
Well, it's trucking related, but it has overhead doors and has higher ceiling height.
I understand that, but you realize, or you understand, do you not, that a cross dock facility is very different? And we're going to be talking about 2091 Brookside today. So you're aware that a cross dock is very different than an industrial property?
It is different, yeah, on some levels.
Okay. Those are my questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Rempel.
No questions. Thank you.
Mr. Whitbread?
No, I'm fine. Thank you.
Thank you, as am I. Mr. Borgstrom, please proceed with your presentation.
Thank you. So this is, they actually, Nortec and Mickelson Coward are actually related companies, so they actually occupy more than one premise within this building. And so this is one of the premises that they occupy. The city has on separate ones. It's a larger building, larger than the individual premises. So the one we're talking about here is 16,000 square feet. There's no disagreement with occupancy costs here, but we took a look at some rental comparables and we show those on page 5. You will see there that they are all over the city. By and large, you will see that the ones with lower wall height tend to attract lower rents. So the city has applied $581 a square foot. Based on all of those, I think something in the range of $5 a square foot would be more appropriate. So as I said, no disagreement on the occupancy costs. So based on all of that, we're looking for a reduction to $119,220. I can tell you that the Board of Revision actually heard this appeal in January of 2020 for the realty end of it. I do know that it's been appealed further to the municipal board. I can also tell you that the wording shown on page 10 was not particularly helpful in trying to glean what the board's thinking was in terms of a rental rate. What they say was that their decision is based on the evidence presented by both the applicant and the assessment and taxation department. So those are the rental comparables that we're presenting here, and we're looking for a reduction to $119,220. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Lobenstein, any questions?
Have you inspected this building?
From the exterior only. I've not been inside.
Do you have do you supply a breakdown of the office? A lot of times you supply the breakdown of the office from the warehouse. Did you supply that here?
I do not have that.
So I have inspected this building, and if I told you it's quite high finishes in the office areas for the Mickelson side of it, and that it takes up a fairly large square footage of that building, would you agree to that?
I don't have any basis to disagree, and I accept you're an honest individual, so yes.
Okay. So with that being said, would you agree that an office rent typically would be quite a bit higher?
Actually, not necessarily. That actually has the possibility of impacting occupancy negatively if you have a fairly large office area and a very small storage or warehouse area, particularly with 15-foot wall height.
So more newly.
I wouldn't necessarily agree with that premise.
Okay, so a more newer renovated office area in a building is going to decrease the value of it.
Well, I can give you the example of I want to say Church Avenue, where Hewlett Packard actually had a call center in there at a rate exactly the same as industrial rents in the area, and a location that I actually inspected. Subsequent to their vacating the premises, it was actually scraped and removed. So it may or may not attract a higher rent.
Those are all my questions.
Thank you. Ms. Rempel.
No questions. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Mr. Whitbread.
Just to redirect to the assessor.
Sure.
First question, did you factor the board decision into your thinking?
I couldn't figure it out.
You couldn't figure it out? Just based on the comment there?
Yep.
Okay. So, no, you did not.
No, I did not.
Thank you. Do you have a breakdown of the office versus the
I
house
do
in
not
square
actually
footage?
myself.
Sorry?
That's why I was asking. I don't. That's why I was asking the applicant if Mr. Borgstrom did have it. So.
Then I'll come back to the applicant if you don't mind, Madam Chair. Do you have a breakdown of the office versus warehouse space?
Yeah, and I do not either.
Would you characterize a guess, half, a third?
I don't have. I know that Stephen said that he inspected it, and I believe him. And I know that he described the space as with a high percentage of finish, and I'm not going to disagree. But I accept Stephen as a very honest individual, so I accept his statement.
I've heard no evidence on the size, the square footage allocated.
Yeah, only his observations, and I know there's no measurements.
And you wouldn't hazard an estimation, would you?
It would not be accurate, so I would not want to hazard.
Thank you. No further questions.
Thank you, nor do I. Okay, thank you very much. The next matter we have is 50 Mandalay Drive. Mr. Lobenstein, whenever you are ready, please proceed.
Excuse me.
50 Mandalay Drive. The business assessment ID is 18595. The total annual rental value is 56,820 square feet. The total area is 6,800 square feet, and the total ARV is $8.36 per square foot. So to get to that $8.36 per square foot, we're applying a base rent or a model rent of $6.25. We're applying full occupancy costs for heat, electricity, water, but nothing for air conditioning, and that's how we get our annual rental value. So there is a lease in place for this one. It's a monthly net lease that was started in 2004 for $4. Sorry, just give me 1 second. Oh, wrong one. And so that being said, we have we're looking at similar types of properties to this one. So these are all multi-tenanted properties like the subject. They're on Bunting, Plymouth, Hutchings, Paramount, Bentall, and Plymouth as well. So these are all in very close proximity to the subject property. Their lease starts are fairly recent, ranging from 2015 to actually, there's one that's way too recent, July of 2018. So please take out 350 Q8 from there. And so the lease terms range from 1 year to 5 years, and the reported areas range from 5,390 square feet all the way up to 8,160 square feet. So they're similar sizes to the premise of this for this business. And the reported rents range from $6.25 all the way up to $8.47 square foot. So you can just look at the page 2. You can get a view of the subject property. This is where it's located. The 50 would be further down. You can see the sort of the premise on the second photo there. It'd be the one labeled with the 50, so that'd be the location, subject property. And I also supply a map so you get an idea of where it is on Mandalay Drive. That being said, the building itself was built in 1976. We have with 19-foot wall height. As I stated, all my comparables are also multi-tenanted buildings similar to the subject property with similar ages ranging from 1965 all the way up to 1979 with wall heights ranging from 17 feet up to 26 feet. So that being said, we feel that the comparables support our base ARV per square foot of $6.25 and the total annual rental value of 56,820 square feet. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Borgstrom, any questions?
Just one or two. This property is located on the realty roll described as 26 Mandalay, correct?
Correct.
And there are a fairly large number of rentals, tenant rentals within this property, right?
Yeah, that's correct.
None of them you've used in your rental comparables.
Yeah, I think it was important to show that other properties in the area similar to this building, not just those ones, have basically net leases that support our base ARV. But that being said, I do have the mailer here, and they're all net leases. Only 2 of them are step ups, not including, as they label here, not including the business that we're looking at today. And if you would like, I can tell you what the rates are.
Well, I know what the rates are because I'm showing them in my brief, and 2 of them are gross leases if you look more carefully.
Well, the information I have is that they're net.
Fair enough. Now, the City of Winnipeg Charter in Section 318.2 requires, in determining the annual rental value of premises, the city assessor must take all factors into account so that, as far as possible, premises similar in size, suitability, advantage of location, and then it goes on to talk about some others. Wouldn't comparables within the subject property itself have exactly the same advantage of location?
Sure, but similarly, the ones that I've shown you as well are within the area of the subject property and are very similar types of buildings. So they all kind of have the same advantage or disadvantage.
Okay, so the wall heights for these ones, and there's 2 buildings on this realty roll site, right?
Yes, I believe so.
Yeah, one building has 17-foot wall height.
Yeah.
One building has 19-foot wall height.
I only have our building that.
It's 17-foot wall height.
Yeah, 17-foot wall height. Yeah.
Again, that's deficient in terms of industrial expectations.
Not compared to my comparables again. They have some with 17-foot wall height, 20-foot wall height, 18-foot wall height, and again, they're different buildings. So it's nice to. That's why we don't want to show all the rents from one building. We want to show rents across the board from different types of buildings as well to show that they are garnering this type of rent with similar types of wall heights.
Those are my questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Rempel.
No questions, thank you.
Mr. Whitbread.
Based on the information in your brief, would you characterize this as non-arm's length or arm's length?
No, I would say this is arm's length. I looked at the mailer, and they are saying it's a net rent. That it seems to be arm's length, and nothing else indicates that it's not. The interesting fact is that it was signed in 2004, and we do have a little box here where they would tick off if it's a step up, and they're saying it's not a step up.
Yeah.
So that would indicate that would be a rate from 2004, which wouldn't be up to market.
I'm sorry, it would
It wouldn't be up into market rates anymore.
not up to 60 years. Right?
That would be.
Okay, that's what I'm trying to get at here. Thank you for your comment. No further questions?
Thank you. I have none. Mr. Borgstrom, please proceed.
So I'm going to start in addressing those questions to begin with. Subject premise is actually on a month-to-month lease. So if the landlord could achieve a higher rent, you would simply terminate the lease and continue it on. I also don't know that $4 per square foot is the rent that was signed at initially in 2004. We do know that on the 2017 income and expense questionnaire, that's the rate that was assigned to it. And it's on the lower end. There are a couple in at $4.25 a square foot. It's at the lower end of the range. That might be arising from a lack of office finish or something else. So in the end, I don't have any reason to disagree with that. And so I'm going to start with our rental comparables on page 5. I can tell you that this property was heard again by the Board of Revision. Again, I did the appeal for the 2020 assessment. So on page 5, we list all of the rents in here. And I just want to point out two for your reference. The assessor indicated that his records showed all of the rents as net. That's not accurate. So let me just take you to, this is the 2017 income and expense questionnaire. You'll see there it's for the 12 months ending September 30th of 2017. And if we, this is one of the ones that was filled out electronically. So if we come down, you'll see there that these two, whoops, these two, as you look across, these are the items that are included in the rent. That leads me to the conclusion that that's a gross lease. And I made those adjustments in our submission to the Board of Revision for the 2020 Realty Appeal. So we took a look at those. I can tell you that the Board of Revision reduced the 2020 assessment, and I show the Board of Revision decision again on page 8 and 9, where the decision was based on a cap rate of 7% and the applicant's net operating income. And I can tell you that the net operating income I calculated was based on the figures I show here on page 5, which includes a $4 rate for unit M50, which is Myers Packaging, 6,800 square feet. That's the rate I used in the Board of Revision hearing for the 2020 Realty Appeal. So based on all of that, including the rental comparables, all within the subject property, $4 per square foot is an appropriate rent. You'll see a couple in there at $7.25, or one of them in there at $7.25. I've not reduced that one down to a level more reflective of what's going on in there. There is no disagreement with respect to occupancy costs, and so we're looking for a reduction to $41,520. And that's what we wanted to cover. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Lovenstein, do you have any questions?
Just a few. So looking at your rent comparables, the unit M30 and the unit W178 both have Ys for step rents. So basically what I'm trying to point out is obviously the owner of the property knows what a stepped up rent is. The situation for the subject, which is the M50 and the M52A, there's an N there, so those are not step ups. So if they were signed in 2008, those would not be considered market then anymore.
Well, what I would point out is that only two of all of the leases in here, and I haven't counted them up, but only two of them have step ups. Some, it may well be that the tenant wanted a lower initial rate, and the landlord said, "Okay, well, we're going to get a higher rent here." But certainly, all of the remaining ones are without step up clauses.
Those are all my questions.
Thank you. Ms. Rumpel?
No questions, thank you.
Mr. Whitbread?
And a redirect, excuse me, to the assessor. You were aware of the board decision on appeal? You were?
Yeah.
And did you factor that into your calculations?
Well, no, for a few reasons. One, because there was a 2020 municipal board taken out on it. And second of all, a multi-tenanted building, so all the rents would be different than just the overall rent that they would apply for the NOI for the realty. So I'm not going to use the overall rent that they've applied for the realty to apply it to this subject property.
So again, you're looking at the fair market.
Correct.
No further questions. Thank you.
I have no questions, so I'm just making a note for 1 minute before we move on.
Yeah, just as a quick comment on that, that may well be the assessor's view of it. But in looking at these rents, certainly none of them would support the 625 that the base rent has been calculated from within the assessor's evidence.
Well, except for the $7.25 to $6.
Yeah. If you want to look at the outlier, great, but generally speaking, 625 wouldn't be supported within this property.
Okay, thank you. Sorry. All right, thank you very much. The next matter is 1400 Inkster Boulevard. Right,
So,
Mr. Lovenstein, when you are ready.
1400 Inkster Boulevard. The business assessment ID is 21083. The total annual rental value is $139,140, and the total area of the premise is 14,000 square feet. The overall ARV is $9.94 per square foot. So we're applying a base rent or a model rent of $7.49 a square foot. We're applying heat, electricity, water, and air conditioning to the full area to get our total annual rental value. So if we just turn to page 2, we'll take a look at the view from the street. So this is actually an office building. It's an office building on an industrial property. So if we look further down to my page 3, you can see the red circle is where it's located on this vast property. So this is Reimer Express Enterprise. So they're the ones that are basically leasing out this entire property, or Reimer Express, I should say. But we're just actually focusing on just this one building, just 14,000 square feet. The complete site is probably over 250 square feet of actual industrial space. So that being said, there's a lease in place for the whole roll. I think it works out to about $3.70 per square foot for the entire roll. That includes the large industrial building that's on it as well. So this one has been separated out because it's just the office portion of it. And as the office portion of it, there's a few, it breaks down, interesting. So there's a basement part of it and a main floor part of it. So we're assessing part of the basement because it has a staff dining room, a kitchen, it's got some mechanical room, and there's a washroom down there for the floor plans we have. And then we're also assessing the main floor as well where the offices are. So that would basically work out to our 14,000 square feet for the premise. That being said, it is actually difficult to find industrial properties that are like this with a separated building with an office space on it. That would be leasing. But for rent comparables, we did the best we could. So we have 380 Creighton, 1600 Church, 2309 Logan, 1330 Mountain, 167 Hutchins, and 1935 Heckle Avenue. So these are all in very close proximity to the subject property. The one I kind of want to point out here is 1600 Church. The reason I point this one out is because it's 8,000 square feet, but 4,000 square feet of it is office space. So just trying to compare it as much as possible to the subject property, and it's renting at $8.75 a square foot. But nonetheless, our leases are fairly new. They range from 2011 to 2015. The the lease terms range from 5 years to 11 years, and the reported areas range from 8,000 to 20,000 square feet, and the reported rents range from $6.89 a square foot up to $8.90 a square foot. So our comparables, they were built between 1958 and 1988, and they have wall heights that range from 19 feet to 24 feet, although the wall heights aren't as important here because, as we know, this is an office building. So we feel that the total annual rental value of $139,140 is fair and equitable. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Borgstrom, any questions?
I do. So Reimer occupies the larger Realty Roll 1400 Inkster, correct?
Yeah, there are, so I should have mentioned, it seems that there are 2 other tenants in there, that not necessarily in the building, but they, on this exact roll number, there are an Agra Food Central, which is 7,300 square feet, and Inkster Maintenance that has over 35,000 square feet as well. I'm not too sure if these are like akin to sub-tenants, but we do have them in our system.
So in preparing this brief, did you look at the income and expense questionnaire that was submitted on this property?
As I stated, it seems to have an overall lease of the whole roll number of $3.70. I believe I stated so.
Okay. So would it be fair to say that the total building area on this site, not quite 130,000 square feet?
The total, like all the buildings combined?
Yes.
I would say, yeah, well, it's a very large site.
Okay, and of all of that area, how is it that the city has separated out? I heard you when you said that there were 2 other tenants occupying relatively small areas. Why would the city separate out these different premises?
Well, I think because this premise is very different from the actual industrial portion itself. If they wanted to separate it out, I guess they could technically rent this out as office space. So I feel that this is a separate building from the main building. Okay.
Now, this is a trucking facility, is it not?
It is.
And trucking facilities require offices, correct?
That is correct.
And quite often, trucking facilities have separate buildings with their offices, don't they?
It's not uncommon. You can see it.
In fact, Paul's Hauling on Oak Point Highway has exactly that. Correct?
I'll take your word for it.
Okay. Now, in terms of your rental comparables, you indicate how much of this premise area is basement?
Pardon me?
How much of the premise area is basement?
Yeah, I think we're, hang on.
I'm sorry, you're breaking up.
Yeah, I think we're assessing about 3,270 square feet of basement. That's how just from looking at the plans I have here, that's kind of what I calculated.
Okay. So we know that there's a lease on the subject property. We also know that there's a board of revision decision on the subject realty roll. If we came in on a different roll number as part of the trucking facility, would you then reflect a lack of office on that rental rate?
Can you repeat your question, please?
We know that there's a lease on the property for the entire site. We know that there was a realty decision for 2020 on the entire realty roll. This is an office building on this site, and there are trucking facilities on the balance of the site. Those trucking facilities, because this is the office, if we came in on a business assessment appeal on the other premises on this site, would the rental rate, or would you recognize the lack of office space in your rental rate?
Right. When I was looking at this too, I noticed that the should have wrote this down, and maybe you can clarify this for me, but it seemed to have different owner names for the 14,000 square feet of the office and the actual trucking portion of it, or maybe that can help answer the question you're asking, because they have Reimer Express Enterprise Ltd for this owner, but it seems like it was a different Reimer name.
Yeah, not an owner, it's the occupant, right?
So they seem to have separated this portion from the have they not?
No, they have not. So let me just ask you then, among your rental comparables, Keewatin, Church, Logan, Mountain, Hutchings, and Hecla, which one of those have basement finish?
I don't believe any of them have basement finish.
And in fact, none of them have basements, do they?
No.
So how is it we arrived at the rental rate we did for basement office?
Well, this is renovated basement. This isn't like basically vacant basement space that can't be used. So you can't put a rent on.
Fair to say you don't have any rental comparables for basement office, correct?
Oh, no, not in this right here.
Those are my questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Rempel?
I am just wondering about the location of this one comparison you have here. Hecla Avenue?
Yeah.
You know what part of the city that is?
Yeah, we've actually already seen it today.
Oh, sorry.
It was I think our first appeal on Keewatin there. It was a cross street running to Keewatin.
Okay. Yeah. That's
just sorry, it's just under the Keewatin Street underpass heading north.
Thank you.
Mr. Rempel, any further questions?
No, that's it for me.
Oh, okay, thank you. Mr. Woodbright?
Oh, I have none, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Borgstrom, please proceed with your question.
Thank you. So I'm going to start in the middle. I go through a fairly lengthy description of the property on page 3, as is typical in our briefs. The subject property realty role is actually leased on a fully arm's length basis. I have personally confirmed this with both the tenant and the owner, or a representative of the owner. There is no relationship between the corporations. They both made that very, very clear to me. I confirmed this quite a number of years ago now. I can tell you that the 2017 income and expense questionnaire, and whoops, you got to share it, not leave. Bear with me. So we are looking at this is you can see at the top, the 2017 income and expense questionnaire for the 12 months ending December 31st. Can we all see it?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Let me just blow it up a little bit here. You can see here that that Reimer occupies the entire premise. They may do some subleasing. I don't know, and I don't know the basis, whether those are gross leases or what other considerations there are. But we can see there that there is a monthly rent for the whole of the site, including all of the lands. And I just want to add that the site area is 1,367,826 square feet in size. So rather than, and you'll see as we go through this, the city initially placed an excess land adjustment on it. This lease actually incorporates the use of the entire site, all of the buildings and all of the lands, with an almost 12-to-1 land to building ratio. So it's a trucking facility, and that's not unusual for trucking facilities. If I go down here, let me find my mouse. There we are. You can see there that it was signed. Let me just rotate the page. You can see there that this was signed by S. Miller. She's the operating tax specialist for, and you can see that this is a 913 area code, so not local. I can tell you, let me just stop sharing that. That I did the 2020 Realty Assessment Appeal as I described. I can tell you that I've attached the order at the rear. At pages 9 and 10, I can tell you that the board accepted my argument with respect to the lease rate for the entire property without a differentiation as between the different premises or the different buildings on the site. I can also tell you that the city had done an excess land adjustment. The Board of Revision removed that adjustment and applied our net operating income. And I can tell you that our net operating income was exactly as we show on page 6. That was based on $653 a square foot. That's the rate that the Board of Revision applied in realty. We also supported it with a number of rental comparables. And you'll see there that they have, some of them have, certainly the one on Chevrier has a land to building ratio very similar to the subject. The one on Otter Street in Port Garry has a much larger land to building ratio. Then you have larger than normal, but something less than the subject for numbers 3 and 4. In the end, the board applied $653 a square foot. That's the rate that we're applying here. Should actually be applied uniformly across the entire site of the buildings. That's the market rent for the buildings on the site, all inclusive. It's almost prejudicial to hive out little sections of it like this for whatever reason. No disagreement with respect to the occupancy costs on this. So based on $653 per square foot, we seek a reduction to $125,700 based on all of that. And I'm happy to answer questions.
Thank you very much. Mr. Lobenstein.
Are you aware that there is such things as splitting land and merging land? So we get
such things as,
well, when owners want to split their land off or merge their land together, that is something that does happen within the city.
But that's not the case here. This tenant rents the entire site.
But it could be the case. They could technically split off the land if they want.
Okay. Physically, we are to assess the properties as they physically exist, not a hypothetical. And as it physically existed, the end of 2017, and it continues on to today, the tenant leases the entire site.
Sorry, I might have misunderstood you, but so the tenant and the owner are not related.
They are completely arm's length for each other. I have an email from the tenant confirming that, and I had a conversation with, I believe, corporate counsel on behalf of the owner. I want to say a number of years ago. I can look up the email if you'd like.
No, that's fine. It was something you said before.
Yeah, no, I personally confirmed that it was not an arm's length. Sorry, that it is arm's length, that it's fully arm's length. No relationship.
Yeah, those are all my questions.
Thank you very much. Ms. Rumpel?
Yes, I'm just curious in terms of, you indicated during the appeal to the Board of Revision, you had included the entire number of square feet for not only the office space, but everything else that Reimer Trucking, for the sake of our property.
Yeah.
Did that include the basement area?
It includes the entire site, all the structures, all the square footage on the site.
So you will apply the $6.53 to the portion of the offices for RW or Reimer Express Enterprises, that basement area as well.
It was a universal rate, that's correct.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Whitbread.
I'll deal with the applicant and then redirect to the assessor if you're all right with that.
Go ahead, please.
Sorry, did you hear me?
Go ahead.
So following up on that question, would you agree, in spite of the board's decision, that typically office would be rated higher than warehouse?
Generally speaking, I would agree with that. In this particular case, if this company's offices are in this particular building on this site, it's prejudicial to them to separate out the different premises. Everything occupied by Reimer should be under the same business assessment rule. Having said that, I don't know, and I don't know if it was included within our analysis, that we should have appealed for Reimer all of the other premises on this site, because they would not have this office space. We would be arguing in those appeals, we would be arguing for the same 653 rate. So it's a universal rate that was applied to all of the buildings on the site.
Now, I can hear you say there's an appeal on that decision. Is it?
Not on this one, I don't believe. I can look, hang on. I don't believe that's the case.
Okay, thank you.
Let me just verify it before I. My apologies. Yeah, there is an appeal filed by both Altus and the city.
I'll redirect now to the assessor. So you were aware of his board decision?
Yep.
And did you consider that in your assessment of the rent?
Yes.
You did?
The board decision, I mean, I consider it in the sense of we want to continue with this appeal because of the board decision, or because of the municipal board order.
Okay, so the 653, you made a conscious decision, or did the model make the decision to go to 749?
That's a model rent.
It's a model rent. Yeah. Okay. And do you have the ability to override that system, knowing there's a decision that rested on 653?
Not if there is a municipal board out on it.
Sorry.
Not if there's a municipal board, we're not going to override the system. Yeah, we're not overriding anything.
Thank you. No further questions.
Thank you very much. Okay, 1 second. All right. The next matter is 467 Jarvis Avenue. Mr. Lobenstein, when you are ready.
467 Jarvis Avenue, the business assessed ID is 21215. The total annual rental value is $129,700. The total area is 16,500 square feet, and the overall ARV is $7.87 per square foot. To find that ARV per square foot, we're applying a model rent or a base rent of $5.74 per square foot. For the occupancy costs, we're applying full heat, electricity, and water to the total area of the building, but we're only applying 696 square feet of air conditioning. And this gives us our total annual rental value. There is a monthly lease in place for $7.64 that was signed in 2015, but this is not a net lease. This would be considered a partially gross lease from what it looks like on the mailer. The rent comparables would be all net though, and they range from $4.75 a square foot up to, 68 cents a square foot up to $6.72 a square foot. And the lease starts range from 2013 up to 2014 or 2017 with lease terms ranging from 1 year to 6 years. The reported areas are very similar to the subject property in that they range from 9,825 square feet all the way up to 16,800 or 19,531 square feet. So the rent comparables are on listed on Myrtle, McPhillips, Aaron, Maine, Wall, and Alexander. So they're all in fairly close proximity to the subject property. That being said, we can look at a view of the subject property on page 2, and there's an aerial view on page 3 and 4, and there's a map on page 4 as well to show you the location on Jarvis Avenue. The rent comparables in terms of ages range from 1947 up to actually the oldest one is a mix between 1927 and also a 2000 edition. That's for the Main Street, 77 Main Street. And the rest of the properties range from 1947 to 1981. The newest one is the 1000 Alexander in 1981. The wall heights range from 12 feet all the way up to 26 feet. So just because we've got asked this question a lot, there is a 2020 municipal board out on this. So, but I do believe the realty was confirmed for this property. So that being said, we feel that the annual rental value of $129,780 is fair and equitable and should be confirmed. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Borgstrom.
Thank you. So the subject property is located in the Dufferin Industrial area, or Dufferin Industrial Neighborhood, correct?
And that's indicated on the map I provided, yep.
Yeah, and so your comparables on Aaron and Wall are in the West End?
Yeah, they're in the West End. That's not,
those are very different areas, are they not?
They're not overly different in the sense that they were built up around similar times.
Are they equally desirable?
In terms of like living there, I would probably prefer to live in the Aaron area, but for industrial manufacturing uses, I don't really see much of a difference.
Have you been in the Dufferin industrial area and seen the tagging and the vandalism?
I have been in the industrial, I've been in every industrial area in the city. And yes, there is tagging and vandalism in that area, as there are in other areas as well. Is it more rampant in that area? It's possible, but.
Okay. Now, 771 Main Street is a rental comparable that I keep seeing over and over again. That's at the corner of Sutherland and Main, right?
That's correct.
What is it?
What is it?
Yeah.
I don't have the, like what tenant's in there? I don't have that information.
Do you know what it's used for?
Yeah, so I remember it might be. No, actually, I don't. That's something else. No, I don't know what it's used for.
Okay. Those are my questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Rempel.
Good questions. Thank you.
Mr. Whitbread.
None, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Borgstrom, please proceed with your presentation.
Thank you. And so the assessor is quite correct. There is the board confirmed the assessment. I did the appeal. I shouldn't say that. I think I did the appeal, and I'm quite certain it is pending for 2020 at the municipal board. There's a whole co-lease co-relationship on this property as well. It was disclosed in our submission this year and in previous years as well at the board revision level. So there's related corporations, so we ignore what information that is. We show a number of comparables on page 5. Most of the properties in this area tend to be owner occupied or related corporations. I can tell you in looking at page 5, we have one on Jarvis, not very far away from the subject, built in 1974 at $4.50 a square foot. Having said all of that, this property has what I would view as an inferior location, generally speaking. It has a very low land to building ratio, and we detail the physical characteristics on page 3. As you look at the overhead, the building covers most of the site. There's a little sliver on the east side, and there's a very small sliver off the back lane on the north side. The land building ratio is about 1.55 to 1. So it is inadequate in terms of industrial, has a 16-foot wall height. These are all factors that are strikes against this property in terms of industrial desirability. So as I did at the Board of Revision, I've applied a rate. My view should be $4.75 a square foot. Certainly not the almost $1 more that the city has applied. And so we go through the calculations on page 6. I don't believe there's a disagreement on the occupancy costs. So we are looking for a reduction to $113,460 based on all of that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Lobenstein, do you have any questions?
Just a few. So the owner is BioChambers Incorporated. What?
That's who's occupying the premises.
Yeah, occupying the premise. So what do they do there?
That's a good question. I would have to look it up. I've not inspected this property that I recall. I know that I've looked at some on Jarvis. Let me just double check. Yeah, not recently. So I can't answer the specifics, but let me do one more thing. I can't tell you exactly what they do inside the building. So I do know that it was a multi-tenant building that has been converted to a single use. I have a recollection of inspecting this, but I looked back a number of years and couldn't find pictures.
I just quickly Googled it, and it's basically plants research. They research plants. It seems like providing growth to research biology.
Sure.
Okay.
And my guess is that it's a legacy location. Certainly, this is not a location that is used by other businesses in the same sort of line.
Okay. So, I mean, like, my question basically is, this is such an undesirable area. It's somewhat interesting to see a research facility researching plants.
Well, I think that it's a legacy location. This is not the only building they have in this area. And I suspect it's just legacy.
Okay, those are all my questions.
Thank you very much. Ms. Rumpel?
No questions.
Mr. Whitbread?
Nothing, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Borgstrom, please proceed with your presentation. Wait, we did that already. Sorry.
I think I did.
Sorry about that. I was so excited for questions. Sorry about that. I just don't want the hearing to end today. So. Let's try this again. Okay.
There's a beverage with my name on it that's waiting for me.
Okay, I will pep it up then. The next matter on the docket is 2091 Brookside Boulevard, Unit 1. Mr. Lobenstein, your turn.
2091 Brookside Boulevard.
Excuse me.
The business assessment ID is 18373, and we actually have an annual rental value on it of $43,320. The value that was actually appealed was $88,140. And the reason for the difference is, if you look down to my recommendation, they contacted the city and they told us that they have reduced their space effective May 1st, 2019. They've reduced their space from 12,884 square feet to 5,204 square feet. So that is the new premise area that we have on there. We're applying a base rent of $6.16 per square foot to come up to, we're applying full heat, electricity, water, and air conditioning. I have since informed Mr. Borgstrom about this. He's told me that he doesn't agree with the occupancy costs, which is, I mean, the square footages, which is fine. But for the meantime, this is the information we had. So we are applying the annual rental value of $43,320. I feel that value is fair and equitable. My rent comparables support it, but I feel that it should be confirmed. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Borgstrom. So you are not accepting the recommendation?
I think that we're awfully close, but in terms of the occupancy cost, the owner has provided with, or the occupant has provided me with very detailed information about the mix of heated and unheated space. And I supplied a revised calculation to the board, and I believe that Belen has distributed it to you. So
okay,
that
so we'll proceed with the
sure.
hearing.
Sure.
Okay. So then I guess, do you have any questions for Mr. Lobenstein?
Just one. And so the calculations that you show on your page 1 of 1 show the entire building as being heated, correct?
Well, we have this entire premise showing that it's being.
Yeah, so my apologies, the entire premise. But previously, some of it was shown as unheated, right?
Previously, as to when they had more space.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not too sure. I don't have that information with me. But
okay. Those are my questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Rampal.
Yes, I'm wondering when the supplementary was issued, did the base ARV per square foot change?
That's a good question, actually. I don't.
It did not. Sorry, Stephen.
Yeah, it did not.
Okay, that's my question.
Mr. Northred?
Nothing. Thanks.
Okay, nor do I. Mr. Borgstrom, please proceed with your premise.
Right. And so just very quickly, on the advice of our client, our figures that we show in the chart on page 5 have been amended to reflect a larger area with heat than I had thought initially. And you've seen the revised figure. So we revised it up slightly to 40,440 square feet based on that information. And I'm just going to move this up real quick. So I sent off a question to Highway Customs warehouse. They're actually, I believe, in Minneapolis. And I had a question about the areas, and he responded to me. There we go. So I'm going to share this again. So his response actually came on July 21st, so after I had filed our briefs on this property. And you can see there, I was just looking at it. So I asked him about, the leases and the leased areas, and he replied, so the leases month to month, they actually reduced their space arising from the loss of a client. So they had a need for not as much space, or required less space, I guess, a better way of putting it. And here you will see they have 824 square feet of office. They have a total of 4,380 square feet of dock space, of which approximately 1,000 square feet is heated. That's the basis of our adjusted operating costs. And according to the legislation, you ought to apply the occupancy costs as they are. I appreciate the assessor, and I got this on the 21st. I sent it to him not very long after. And so we would be looking for a reduction to reflect those occupancy costs provided by the premise occupant. And so our request is as shown on the revised ARV calculation document that I sent. I know that the assessor already had a copy of it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Lobenstein, do you have questions?
No questions.
Ms. Rumpel?
I just want to make sure I understand this. Are you saying that of the 5,204 square feet, all of it can be heated, but they lost an occupant, so they're only heating a portion of it?
No, they reduced their space. They used to have quite a bit more space. So they reduced the space. Part of this building has always been unheated. We've been, I got to tell you that we've been doing this property for, I want to say dating back into the 1990s. We used to do it for a different owner, but we're now doing it for this occupant. It's an arm's length owner, arm's length tenant. And so they reduced their space. And so they continue to occupy 5,204 square feet. And of that, there is only about 1,000 square feet. So 824 square feet is heated and air conditioned. And beyond that, there is another 1,000 square feet of cross-dock space that is heated. The rest is unheated. This building has always had a large amount of unheated space in this. In a cross-dock situation, very often that's what you'll find. Sometimes it's heated, but very often not, because it's not required that the cross-dock is used for the very temporary storage of goods, which are then unloaded from a truck on one side and put on a different truck on the other side with a forklift. So it's really, the goods are there for a very short period of time. Dry goods don't require refrigeration or heating even.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that clarification. That's all my questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Whitbread.
I have none, thank you.
Nor do I. Okay. Thank you very much. I believe that finishes our docket this afternoon.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thanks, Stephen.
Thanks, Brad.